Hello, it's Monday. My name is Simon Miller. Welcome to another episode of Miller's Musings. We'll just move that a little bit. Once again, got to apologise for the fact I'm wearing a vest. Weird thing to apologise for. But hey, look, what a perfect way to start, right? Clearly, I'm a bit self-conscious about that. Therefore, I feel like I need to bring it up. But if you're not in the UK right now, we're going through an insane heat wave. And I can say that I don't like it because I'm a man, whenever asked, if you say to me, Simon, what weather you prefer? I would always go, I want to be freezing cold at all times because my temperature is always about 700 degrees. So the colder I can be, the better. Anyway, let's not worry about trivial things like that. Let's get on with it. Miller's Musings, you've never seen it before, is a weekly series by me, Simon Miller, where I talk about some aspect of mental health or depression or anxiety for the simple fact that I don't think it's talked about enough. I think it's one of the most important things in the world. And I believe the only way to progress that conversation is to have the conversation to begin with. And today we're going to do something a little bit different because this is more of a pet peeve of mine. I don't want to say pet peeve, that's too negative. But I think it's another part of, it doesn't really tie into mental health specifically, but it's a way that some people deal with mental health that I sometimes worry can have a negative effect on other people. It came up this weekend, won't get into why, that's unfair. And I thought, you know what, it's probably a good idea to talk about it. And I understand, everybody deals, as we say every week on this, everyone deals with their own stuff in different ways. There is no right and there is no wrong, and that's what ties into my point today, because something that can happen every now and then, or there is a stigma from some people who are diagnosed with whatever, there's thousands of different things that can correlate to a negative or a difficult well-being, we should say. And what I have seen recently, and again, there's no right or wrong, this is just my opinion. If you don't agree, that's cool. But there are some times when you watch videos like these, or maybe you read a book or see somebody on TV, and they'll be talking about a specific thing, let's just keep it simple, a specific thing that ties into mental health, and they'll say, if you feel like X, Y, and Z, well, that's not really, that's not the real thing, but, A, B, C over here, well, that's really real, we should worry about that. And that bothers me because, although, I don't know, I can't even think of one right now, but, I just don't like the idea, if you're struggling, right, that struggling is completely relative to you. It's like when we hear terrible stories on the news, a lot of us says, oh, aren't we lucky? And we are lucky. And that does tie into something else as well, that we should always try and appreciate the day and, understand that we are, some of us, I don't know, but a lot of people are in privileged positions. A lot of people aren't, of course. But it doesn't work like that because you're still struggling with your own problems. And while it may help for a day or so, other things in your own life are going to come in and you may lose that perspective. So if you feel like you're dealing with something and then somebody else tells you, well, no, looking at your actions, that's not really, that doesn't really tie into, this thing that other real people are dealing with. I think that's really dangerous because if you're dealing with it and you're struggling with it, then it is absolutely as important and as difficult and as stressful and as, whatever word you want to put there as anybody else because you're dealing with it. For example, if I have a mole on my face, right? Something as simple as that. And I don't like it, but somebody else has a mole on their face and it doesn't bother them, then it's two completely different ideas or concepts, even though it's, there are similarities there, or if not, say, look, that's exactly the same principle. Let's say anxiety, for lack of a better term. Anxiety doesn't really work because, but it does to a certain extent, because somebody could have more anxiety than somebody else, right? But if I was to sit here today and say, well, my anxiety is the worst anxiety, if you're out there and I've given you some examples and you think, well, my anxiety doesn't sound as bad as his, maybe I shouldn't feel this way, that's going to trigger more anxiety for you, which is why it's a terrible, in my opinion, it's a terrible thing to do to try and almost judge people through the camera or through the lens, unless you're a medical health professional, or it's not a one-to-one environment, right? Because if you go and see somebody and you're suffering from anxiety and someone can say to you, well, actually, we do have to work on this, but thankfully I've seen other people, that's different. That's a one-to-one thing. But when we're talking about mediums like this, when it goes like that, and it can, and it's a broad audience, and it does happen a lot, I see it, I think it's incredibly dangerous to the people watching who may be struggling with something and then come away from it thinking, oh, well, they kind of made it like what I'm going through isn't, well, I shouldn't be struggling with it as much as I am. And that's absolute nonsense. You struggle with whatever you struggle with because that's your struggle. This is the worst sentence I've ever said in my life. But it's true. And if you come away then feeling bad about it or like, oh, well, that person's got it worse than me, you know what's going to happen? It's going to open a big flaw, a big hole in the floor. You're going to fall through it and it is eventually going to get worse. So, I mean, it's an awful way to put it, but it's the only way I can think to put it. Mental health is not a competition, and we should all be in this together. There should be no negativity when it comes to mental health. It should all be, it doesn't even have to be a positive thing, but it certainly should be a unified thing. And a coming together of people. We'll use anxiety again just because it's an easy one. So, if I get anxious about doing an exam, for example, and you get 10 times more anxious about doing an exam, it's still anxiety. And it doesn't mean that yours isn't, more important or needs help quicker than mine, or I deal with it, or whatever. It should all just be thrown into the bracket of where you are suffering from this. My anxiety is not better or worse than yours, and vice versa. And I see it happening a lot. Especially, I can't think of a good example now. Well, I don't want to give too many examples because I don't want people to go, "Oh, he's talking about so and so." Because I'm not talking about anybody. I'm talking about this is a general thing that I've seen. But yeah, we can just never do that. So if you watch a video on depression and you feel depressed, but then you see someone there saying, "Oh, well, I lost my mum and my dad and my cat and my job and I'm broke," and then they look at the camera and say, "If you're only dealing with it a little bit, you don't actually suffer from depression." No. Just, I don't like being that blunt on these videos, but just know your depression is as valid and as important as everybody else's. And the only way we're going to, keep this conversation going and keep this, good wave that 2018 is better than ever it has been when it comes to that stuff, is if we all just agree, well, Bob's depressed and Jane's depressed and, Rita's depressed, but, let's just deal with them as individual cases. It's not a competition. It's not a race. If you feel depressed, because this is the other thing as well, sometimes if you feel depressed but you get through a day and you have a good day, how many times when you're so used to feeling in a negative state and you have a positive state, do you make yourself feel guilty? You think, "Oh, well, I shouldn't feel like that," because you're not used to it. And the last thing you then want, if you are having one of those days, is to see someone going, "Well, that's just going to knock you down." It should never, ever, ever be about knocking people down. It should always be about lifting people up. So yeah, I'm going over myself now, but sometimes I think it's important to repeat things. That's how it sticks in your brain. No matter what you're struggling with or what is making you feel negative, that is as important as anybody else's. And please, please, please don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. Again, if you're listening to me now and you don't agree with me, that is cool too. You are perfectly allowed to do that. This is just something I clearly feel very passionate about. Hopefully that's coming through the lens of the camera. And it's just something that I felt like I had to say because when you break your arm, it's really easy to fix a broken arm, right? It hurts and it sucks and you have to wear a cast and nobody wants that. But you go to a doctor, again, they put it, they wrap it up, and in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long, it could be a really bad break, it will fix itself. With mental health, there is no visual cue. It's something that we have to talk about. It's something that we feel. And the last thing that anybody needs is to feel like, well, I shouldn't. Why I should never have felt this way. What an asshole I am. You're not an asshole. You're not. It doesn't even matter what you're depressed about. Maybe you're depressed. What have I got around me right now? My iPhone's right there. Maybe you dropped your iPhone on the floor and it shattered into 1,000 pieces and that triggered it for you. You know what? Is that a big deal in the grand scheme of things? No, not really. Not compared to stuff like losing your job or a family member or whatever. But was it important to you? And did it clearly tie into other things that meant again the bottom fell out? Of course it did. So it doesn't matter that it's just about an iPhone. It's a reflection of something else. And it's the something else that matters. Like we have names for all of these things. Like we've gone through loads of them. That is almost not what matters. It's how you feel. And it's about making sure you getting back to a place where you feel good and you can get through every day and do what it is what you want to do in a happy and delightful way, for lack of a better term. So I say lack of a better term a lot. I guess I like to tiptoe my way through things a little bit because I understand what a sensitive and delicate situation or conversation it is. But yes, I really, really wanted to stress, and I may not do another one like this again. I think I'll talk more broadly. But it's okay to enter a bad period. It's not okay, but it is, you know what I mean? A bad period of your life through something trivial. And you can be suffering from symptoms that sound like X, Y, or Z and not be experiencing them to the intensity of someone else. And it's still just as valid as theirs. I mean, there is a positive thing you could take away from it in a horrible way as well. But you know what I mean? At least it's not as bad as theirs. Yes, that's one way to look at it. I mean, it's not the best way to look at it, but it doesn't take anything away from it. If you're struggling, you're struggling. And the only thing that matters is getting to a point where we're not struggling anymore. And as we always say, as I say every week, everybody is struggling. I promise you. Even the people you look at that you think are confident and strong, they have weak moments too, because we all do, and we all find ways to get through it. Like, we'll talk about this one day, not today, but that's why some people drink loads, because it's a way to cover up, or not everyone, I'm just saying, not a general term, but, it's a way to cover up and just get through those 24 hours, something to switch their brain off. And sometimes you need to switch the brain off and you can't. I've just seen that we're clocking over 10 minutes, and I will ramble up about this for ages because it does get me going. So I will wrap this up. But yes, it's okay. That's what I want to take away from this. It is okay, and it's, as we said before, it's okay to not be okay. So chin up as best as you can. Don't beat yourself up. We've already got far more other things to worry about than that. If you feel anxious, you feel down, you feel depressed, you feel whatever, no matter what the catalyst for it was, don't focus on that. Focus on how you feel and focus on what you need to do to get better. We'll end it there. Like, share, subscribe if you fancy. I do this once a week. Drop a comment below. It does go up in the description. All of my videos are supported by Patreon content, patreon.com/Humber316. You don't have to give me a penny for any of this. Not going to lie, on other videos, I'll pimp it out like a madman because that's how advertising and business works. Nothing to do with these videos, but it's there. Some people ask me about it. Irrelevant. This is beyond money and all that. Money, of course, money and having a life is important, but I do these. I think I've hinted at it on older videos because it means something to me and things in my life, which maybe one day we'll talk about more on the nose, but that day is not today. As always, please do share this if you think it'd help anybody. Drop me a line if you think there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover. There's a playlist if you want to go through all of them. That will be in the description below if I remember, but I will remember. And as always, you take care of yourself. And as Jerry Springer used to say, take care of each other, but put yourself first. Nothing wrong with that. Doesn't make you a selfish person. You can be selfless and put yourself first. Nothing wrong with that. I will see you soon.